So hello everyone and welcome to Screenwalks. I'm Marco De Mutis, digital curator of Photomuseum Winterthur in Switzerland, and together with Joan Uriarte, the Photographers Gallery in London, we have created this collaborative program of fortnightly live-streamed events. Through Screenwalks, we are interested in investigating the changing role of the photographic image in its networked and digital forms, and each event is led by an artist, researcher, or a curator, in this case, all of them, who takes the audience to the spaces where their core practice takes place. Screenwalks can be a live performance, a peek behind the scenes of an artwork, or a guided tour online, among other possible formats. We have hosted more than 50 Screenwalk events. This is the 58th event so far. And you can find video recordings of each one of them on our website and YouTube channel. If you have found Screenwalks useful for your professional or personal interests, do consider subscribing to Folders, which is our subscription model. For €7, you will be supporting the program and its artists, and we'll also get your personalized folders on folders.screenwalks.com. There you will receive files and extra content from the artists and researchers on Screenwalks. Now, some housekeeping information. Your microphone should be muted to avoid noise disturbances. If it's still on, please mute it now. We are recording and will be archiving this event. Please use the public chat to ask questions or feel free to send a private message to John or me, and we will bring them to our guest at the end of the event.
Hello from my side too. I'm Joan Uriarte, curator of the digital program at the Photographers Gallery in London. Tonight, we will be mixing two of the things that I'm personally more interested in, eating and images. We will be diving into something called photophagy, practice suggesting that eating images might be a good way to move forward from the current status of the image. Following the post-photographic discourse, of which our guest tonight is one of its most prominent figures, we are going to learn if ingesting images could help process what remains of a photograph once it's been compressed, circulated, exploited, reinterpreted, and spattered again to the wastelands of the network visual culture. I have to admit that I have no idea of what entails to engage with that particular photophagic practice. I'm not sure if there's any preferred seasoning that could be added, if frying, baking, or grilling works best, or even what kind of digestion or indigestion they may cause. I only hope that none of you has any allergies to images. Thankfully, we have the person who has coined the term to help us understand what it means and what it implies. We have Joan Fontcuberta with us tonight. During his more than 50 years of career, Joan has written extensively about pre-photography, photography, and post-photography. His work includes thinking, writing, and creating about the conflict in between ideas related to nature, technology, photography, and truth. He has had solo shows at MoMA in New York, at the Art Institute in Chicago, the Institut l'IBAM, Institut Valencià d'Arts Moderns, creo que es, al Museu Nacional d'Art de Catalunya, Maison Européenne de la Photographie, the Science Museum here in London, at the Museum an der Guten Kunst, and many, many other places that I think I'm going to stop here now because otherwise I could be like the whole night just explaining all the museums where he has shown and his work has been collected. He has authored dozens of books about aspects of history, aesthetics, and epistemology of photography. In 2013, he received the Hasselblad Award International Prize, and in 2020 was entitled Doctor Honoris Causa by the Paris University. Joan, we are very happy and excited to have you on Screenwalks today. The screen is yours.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thanks, Marco and John, for inviting me to shoot some ideas and talk about current issues dealing with my work I'm doing right now. When we talk about this session, you were very clear stating that you don't want a slideshow. Slideshows forbidden. Okay, it's a pity. I'm quite good with slideshows, but I'll do my best just bringing some materials to avoid showing just still images. When you have been listing a summary of my exhibitions, John, you didn't mention that I also did an exhibition at the Photographers Gallery where you are. and this exhibition was one of my classic fictions, Fauna, in which I, together with my colleague Pere Formiguera, we created a kind of fictional narrative about a German naturalist who traveled throughout the world and discovered weird species which challenge Darwinian theory of evolution. Of course, it was a fake, when fake was not a common word. And this was, I remember in London, it created quite tension because the Photographers Gallery was a kind of a temple for photo documentary, for the idea that photography was an evidence, and then challenging this idea that photographs are just speculative constructions as any other human creation was somehow controversial. Well, this section in my work, narrative fictions, has been the most popular, but not the only one. And at the moment where post-truth, fake news, alternative facts, and so on are so common, I'm maybe deriving towards other interest, which I have always had, but haven't received such visibility as the classic fictional projects. And my current interest is about the relationship of matter and memory. I mean, the fact that photographs are still objects, but they start belonging to the category of non-things. I think that it was Willem Flusser who said that photography was the frontier with the culture of objects and the culture of pure information. I think we are still in this transition, okay? So I would like to deal with this kind of concerns, but mainly trying to explain the sources of what I'm doing. And let me start drinking a cup of tea. In this cup of tea, I will dip a muffin, a Madeleine cake. I soak and I eat, and oh, suddenly I remember all my past life. I had everything forgotten. Miracle, it's magic. My memory is coming back. Okay, I'm doing funny parody, and probably, excuse me, let me finish. I'm joking with Marcel Proust and his famous à la recherche du temps perdu, in search of lost time. Of course, the muffin was the object which released a forgotten past, important biographical data which were lost in the deepest of our memory suddenly emerge. Well, photography is having a similar role, a similar function, but usually this function has been operating not through taste, through texture, through sensual qualities, but through vision as an image, perception, visual perception. But the idea, the aim was exactly the same, to encapsulate time, to encapsulate data, to encapsulate human experience, and allow a viewer to recover all this experience and sensations. Okay, so let's go ahead with this idea. And let me project a very short video by one of these genius of nouvelle cuisine, of the new cooking tradition, Jordi Roca. His restaurant in Girona, 100 kilometers away from Barcelona, has been considered several times by gastronomic critics as the best in the world. There are three brothers, and Jordi Roca is the specialist in dessert. And I would like to share with you his last creation. What do you see?
We can see the video, yeah.
Which one?
With the books.
Okay, because I don't see it. Okay. 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 Okay, Jordi Roca, of course, is getting the inspiration in Proust chapter with Madeleine cake. And this dessert is titled Llibre Vell, Old Book. And it's absolutely inspired in this passage of from Marcel Proust novel. And in his explanation, he said that he would like to provide the one eating that dessert, the same feelings that were acquired when reading the book. So it was through eating, through ingesting, that you were recovering some past memories or sensations. If we go back to history, we will find samples in which eating a book was not an eccentricity. For instance, there are two cases that I like especially. Let me check my note. For instance, in ancient Egypt, there was a legend of a magician called Nofrekopta, who stole the book of knowledge from Thoth, the scribe of the gods, and swallowed it to digest and make all the wealth of wisdom his own by the fast track. And with a similar style, in the Bible, we find another passage in which the prophet Ezekiel swallows the scroll that Yahweh hence holds out to him to communicate the message he must preach to his people. So actually, Jordi Roca is not inventing anything. Eating a book to achieve all the wisdom, all the knowledge, all the experience is somehow that was already in the cultural history of humanity. No? Let's go to the next step. And I would like to share again a couple of sequences of a TV series which derived from a book written in 2018 by the Irish novelist Cecilia Ahern, which has become a TV series produced by Nicole Kidman. It's the story of different women with weird qualities. In the second chapter, casted by Nicole Kidman herself, it's the story of a woman who eats physically photographs. And this, of course, reminds of the metaphor, hunger for images, but not in such a sense. Let's show a couple of let's watch a couple of sequences. Okay, let's watch now another one. What's going on? Robin cast the role of someone called Nicole Kidman cast the role of a woman called Robin, whose mother is suffering senile amnesia or Alzheimer. And the idea is that she's going to look for her and bring to her home to be able to take care of her. And just in the house, the home where Robin, Nicole Kidman, spent all her life, she founds a family photo album. And just collecting some personal belongings to bring with them, she takes that photo album, and along the film, she will be eating the photographs one after the other. Let's see another chapter.
Hiding there. It's an album. What album? Oh, you stole that from my house.
Thought we could go through it together.
Oh, right. You're trying to trick me into memory aerobics.
No. It's as much for me as it is for you. So many of these pictures are on holiday.
You were little, that's what people do.
Look at this.
Oh, I hated that cat.
You did not.
No, it pissed all over the house.
Look at Dad, he looks so young. So funny, you're not in any of these.
Oh, of course I wasn't. I mean, who do you think was holding the fucking camera?
Oh, yeah, you're right.
Just put the bloody album away. I'm gonna go hello.
Well, you see, at the precise moment of swallowing the photo, Robin experiences a kind of flashback which transports her to the happy scene captured in the snapshot. There are many readings here. She's eating the photographs in the toilet, hidden. It's like being aware that this eccentricity in contemporary time could be considered like a sin, something like the object of an addiction. And actually, this is what's happening in the movie. I mean, the experience of recovering the past is so intense, so cathartic, that Robin become an addict of eating photographs. Well, iconophagy is not new. Now, our contemporary time, installed in a kind of scientific sensibility, positivistic approach, and technological paranoia, consider myth as something to be absolutely refused. But for thousands of years, mythology has been impregnating mankind spirit. And in this mythology, eating images was a way to achieve the meaning depicted in the images. So there were somehow, according to the historians, I have just a second. There are many books about the subject. This is the last one, probably the most complete, in which the author, Jeremy Kering, displays a very rich sequence of examples in which different civilizations, starting from the Egyptian in the Middle Empire, 2000 years before Christ, there are evidence that for different rituals they were eating images. But this was especially a strong practice in the Middle Age after the emergence of the printing, when prints of saints or religious figures were eaten, were swallowed in a kind of ceremonial or ritual interest. But there are two different functions, or from the anthropological point of view, we can eat an image for a therapeutical reason. I mean, I can eat the image of a scent, and the scent will protect me from different diseases of risks for my life. And then there's a kind of social issue. I mean, we can share eating an image because this is a way to create a sense of community. There are quite strange examples, and my favorite one is the print of the Virgin Mary of Santa Maria del Carmine Maggiore in Naples. Was really the champion, because she alone could cure her faithful of leprosy and the holy fire, bright horn poisoning, stop an hemorrhage, restore the sight to the blind, to preserve Christians from drowning, and to protect them from wild animals. Imagine, you just eat, the image of this Virgin Mary, and you are protected from all these diseases or dangers. In medieval times, there were two different figures which were called, I don't know if I pronounce properly, Schluckbildchen, this means small images to swallow, and Santini eduli, edible sense, which were very common first in the Catholic areas of Germany and then spreading to all Europe. Anthropologists believe that primitive tribes that practice ritual cannibalism did that because eating the organs of the enemy killed in battle was a way of appropriating their warrior qualities, courage, strength, or so on. Iconophagy then could be considered a kind of vicarious cannibalism. I mean, the body is eaten by an interposed image. In the case of Rohr, it's not so. We are not wishing to acquire the qualities of the represented person in the image. In the case of Rohr, Robin is looking at her own pictures when she was a child. She's trying to recover time. She's trying to recover the past. And maybe that's the ontological difference between traditional iconophagy and current photophagy. In any case, in that film that probably will be studied in the future in the schools of photography or in the university curricula dealing with photography, I'm interested in two different aspects. One is memory. I already dealt with that aspect, but the other one is, look, if you eat a photograph, means that you eat something which is having a substance. You cannot eat a digital photograph. You need something that you can touch, something which is having a flavor, something which is having some weight, something which is material, which is an object. And maybe eating photographs reminds the transition in which we are installed, which is the evolution from photographs as things to photographs as not things, from photographs as bodies to photographs as pure information. And because of that, I've been also interested in this request of the remains of materiality. And at this point, I would like to explain another personal anecdote. In 2013, I was invited by the University of Gothenburg in Sweden to do a trip, a kind of expedition through Spitsbergen in the Svalbard archipelago. And I didn't know at that moment what was the aim of the travel, but it was 12 people, 6 artists and 6 scientists. And then I found out that we were going to follow the track of an expedition originated in 1897, in which 3 crazy guys tried to overflight the North Pole with an hydrogen balloon. They were Salomon, Andre, an engineer, and 2 partners. One of them, Niels Timberg, was a photographer. The expedition was a disaster. After 3 days flying, the balloon fell down, and the 3 guys tried to survive on the ice pack during 3 months. Several rescue expeditions were sent, but they never found them. And finally, in 1930, just in a kind of random trip, whaler found the last camp with the corpses. And not only that, they found all the belongings. They found all the clothing and the Niels Strindberg camera with the exposed film. Of course, for 30 years, the photographs were terribly damaged, but through the accident that the film suffered, you can still see some of the image remains. Well, this is a story quite epic that I was fascinated with. I didn't know anything about. Instead, in the northern countries, it's quite well known. There are more than 60 books. There are films, documentary, fictional about the story. There are operas. Let me show, for instance, this is, I have a small collection. This is a film, opera. Another concert. So it's been very inspiring. Even there are artists who have been dealing with the subject. The Venice Biennale, a Danish artist, did something about that. Well, and maybe the more interesting, Andres' diaries. I mean that during several months, the guys were, writing a notebook, which has been transcribed and printed, and it's really fascinating. I want to work on that. But let me show some of the documentary movie that I prepare for you, so you have some images to get more acquainted with the story.
Som alltid dessa dagar finns en viol vid ditt porträtt. Och det är i synnerhet när jag känner doften av den som allt mellan...
Alfred Nobel, sponsor the
trots att den icke fick levas fullt ut. Jag kan ännu känna hur ont det gjorde när du sa mig. Du...
Det är alltså med blandade känslor vi återkommer hem. Vad ska folk säga om att vi har lyckats? Men vi har gjort vad vi kunnat. Och lyckas André skaffa pengar till nästa år, så har vi större utsikter att lyckas då.
Högt ärade doktorn. Seglen står nu tvärs. De bärar utmärkt och ökar farten. Ballongen går utmärkt vackert nu. Det hela är verkligen ståtligt. Den 14 juli klockan 8:11 eftermiddagen hoppade vi ur gondolen. Uttröttade och uthungrade, men 7 timmars hårt arbete måste göras innan vi fick rekreera oss.
De viktigaste fordringar som ställs på expeditionens fotografiska utrustning är då följande. Den ska tillåta tagandet av hastiga ögonblicksbilder. Exponeringstid 1/100 sekund med stor synvinkel. För att undvika förväxling mellan stort antal bilder bör varje bild vara märkt. Detta sker genom en särskild framför övre filmkanten placerad apparat. Den består helt enkelt av 9 små hjul av mässingsbläck, vilka i kanten är...
Well, in any case, 100 photographs were saved from the probably 300 that were shot. And of course, these images are quite damaged. André was born in a small town called Grena between Göteborg and Stockholm. And in his native town, there's a museum devoted to this expedition, and they hold all the negatives which were saved and prints done from those negatives in 1930. And I was there, I reproduced all the images, and I was fascinated at the following idea. Usually photography has been a device to store memory. But what happens when photographs become amnesic because the link with reality is lost because of this damage, because of this deterioration? I'm interested in this idea of vanishing memory, of amnesic photographs, or photographs suffering Alzheimer, which reminds of this Roar film with Nicole Kidman. I started then a project titled Trauma. Trauma is a Greek word which means wound, which means defeat, which means physical impact. And if you think about the history of photography behind us, mainly the more iconic images are devoted to record traumatic events in mankind, the Hiroshima bomb, the Vietnam War execution, the American flag on Iwo Jima, and so on. But the thing is that photographs themselves could be the victims of a trauma. And I found that this quality of ill photographs, of photographs suffering a disease, when looking at the archive of Niels Strindberg photographs. Those photographs were suffering, and their suffering were overlapping the suffering of the 3 adventurers trying to survive and finally dying. So this was a quite poetic, but at the same time interesting point in theoretical terms, because photography was a promise of immortality. Our body will disappear, but our photographic image will last forever. It's false. The photographic image will be also vanishing. So we are deceived, we are disappointed, because this eternity that what was promised to us is not accomplished at all. So in the past years, one of my actions has been visiting historical photographic archives and looking for damaged pictures. And I've been doing different projects on that. One of these projects is titled Kintsugi, and I would like to share with you the PDF of a book which I did with this idea. Sorry, I don't find that now. Okay, this is the book. Actually, I have a copy here that I will show it to you. And Kintsugi is a Zen tradition which consists on when some ceramic piece is broken, they don't throw it away, but instead they try to recompose, but not hiding the scars, the bones, but instead outlining it with gold thread, because those scars imply the previous life of the object, the experience which has been projected onto the use of that object. So, for instance, a base or a plate recomposed with Kintsugi technique has more important value than a random new one, because of this idea of history behind, experience, humankind, and resilience. So I've been interested in collecting photographs with this kind of scars, and produce a book in a very Japanese sensibility and design, which combines fragments of different deteriorated negatives. The images are not manipulated. I mean, the color is not altered, it's not changed. It's, to me, the process implies the idea of the objet trouvé. So it's the fact of finding the image in such a stage. I don't change the contrast, intensify the color, enhance the, I don't know, the sharpness, whatever. It's just the way I found. Time and microorganisms are the responsible of this final visual result. And usually there are images dealing with violence, with conflicts, with wars, with executions, with accidents, with murders, and so on. Okay, and this is physically the book. bending. And the interesting point is that not all, but some of the pages have been torn and recomposed with the gold thread as the original kintsugi objects. I don't know if it's visible with a web camera, but there's an intervention in the pages in order to echo the idea of the kintsugi. Going back to the idea of eating photographs, actually, I did another project in which I was not eating photographs myself, but let snails eat photographs for me. This project is titled Gastropoda and originated in the fact that I'm not living in Barcelona, in the town, but in the countryside, 30 kilometers away, in a very humid region. I have a house with the post box outside on the road. And when the postman delivers my mail, if I'm on traveling or it takes me long to go and pick up my letters, snails arrived and eat the paper. First, I was a little worried about that, but usually I only receive invoices and invitation cards from museums and galleries. So I didn't care about the invoices. Most of important mail arrived by, by email, by internet. And regarding the invitations, I realized that those snails were eating art because those postcards were usually reproducing an artwork in the exhibition, which was displayed in that gallery of museum. So I thought that it was a good idea to let the snails eat as much art as they wanted and look for the result. Let me show what's happening. So I left the snails do their job, and from time to time I was checking how the result was, and at a certain moment I just save some of the invitation cards, scan it or reproduce it, and enlarge it. So it was an interesting gesture because was transforming waste in an artwork. Yeah? And all this kind of performance was having different readings. For instance, was pointing the fact of materiality. In order to eat the image, you must substance. You must need a substance. You need something which is tangible, which can be eaten, as you see here in the video. But it was also somehow questioning for the authorship. Who is the author of the result? The snails, myself, all together. I mean, there's some complicity here, and I project discourse, I project meaning on the what the snails are doing. So it was a quite interesting project for different reasons. Also because it was a way to go back to this idea of slow food. Snails were good prophets of slow food. And usually when I was presenting this series in a gallery of museum, I displayed a terrarium with a dozen or 3 dozens of snails eating during the period of the exhibition the invitation cards published by that museum or gallery. And from time to time, I was picking some of the results and just enlarging and displaying on the wall. So this transit from the being the feeding to the displayed artwork was very evident. And at the end of the exhibition, the museum staff and some fellow artists were eating the snails that had been eating art. So the cycle, this kind of metabolic cycle was closed. I was interested in presenting this succulent recipe of snails. Maybe you foreigners are not familiar with that, but in some areas in Spain, we love snails. So it was a an idea in which I implied the metabolical cycle of images. Images were born, images were growing, images were getting adult, were having an agony, were dying in order to implement and restart this cycle. And my current project is quite connected to this idea. I call it Élevage de poussière, which is the famous title for Duchamp piece photographed by Man Ray in 1920. And in this case, I got a commission from the National Archives in Italy, in Rome. They invite every year a photographer to work in their collection. And again, I tried to find damaged pictures. And they have the complete collection of a quite interesting figure, who is the Count Poggi. He was an aristocratic figure, a politician, who had two activities. One was alpinism, and the other one was he was an amateur, photography amateur. So he was photographing mountains, especially the Alps. And I got a complete series of let me show, of stereoscopic plates in a very poor condition. Don't know if you can see them. By the way, I forgot to show some of the material used for the trauma book or for the Kintsugi. These are the negatives that I find in plates, glass plates, or acetate, like this or this. So usually collections and museums throw them away because they can contaminate the rest. And instead, these are treasures. For instance, these are 35 negatives exposed on nitrate film. And believe or not, these are photographs of the Spanish War, 1936, 1939. And these are almost dying. There's no image at all. But I'm very interested in the texture, in the matter quality, which provides the finest images for this kintsugi project. Okay, so now I will show the PDF, which is not finished. I'm working these days on that, and the book will come out in May. There will be an exhibition in Rome and the presentation of the book at that moment. Just a second. Just a second, I'm not able to. Okay, so this is temporary. It's not really finished, but okay. So I take one plate, this one, and I photograph both sides. In one of the shots, the stereoscopic plate is presented as an object with reflected light. In the other page is the same object, but it's the light going through as you know, a transparency, as a negative. So you can see the difference in the texture, in the surface, and in the material quality. Then there's a double page, which I will show later because it will come printed in transparent paper, which will be a fragment, a blow-up fragment of one of the negatives. And then there is again the other side of the plate with a special light which enhances the presence of this kind of dust, which looks like a galaxy, which looks like a kind of a macrocosmos vision. The dust, all the particles, all the material quality. And I'm doing that with different plates, always the same protocol. And then I did another step forward. I went to the biology department of the University of Barcelona, took some samples of the microorganism, bacteria or fungi, mold, which are eating the photograph, which are, you know, absorbing the memory of the photograph. And I did some shots with electronic microscope. The same method, the scanning electronic microscope. So I present this kind of diptychs, a detail of the dusty surface of the plate and its interpretation through the microscopic view. Okay, now let me show you what's so these are the double spreads on transparent film, which are just very teeny details of the plates. Here you can appreciate all the texture, all the structures, all the graphic patterns. Okay, so somehow in this series, I deal with some organisms that are eating the photograph, which are invading, taking over, and somehow eating memory. I'll do the same exhibition in Barcelona in mid-September. And at that point, I will invite that chef, Jordi Roca, to collaborate and prepare a special recipe for the occasion. You are all invited. And before finishing, let me just say as a kind of, closing my statement that I don't know, that iconophagy put its finger, it puts the outlines, the fact that if we are what we eat, we are more and more images, because we eat somehow more and more images. But let me be a little cynical. We are on the threshold of a new culinary ecstasy where photos can become essential ingredients. No more deconstructing fried eggs or sphericizing caviar smoke. 3-star restaurants will offer now photos with potatoes, perhaps with shavings of black truffle. On a less exquisite but more humanitarianly transcendent level, iconophagy can alleviate world hunger. In a post-photographic society characterized by an excess of images, images can constitute a valuable nutritional resource that the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations should not underestimate. And if eating photos revives the memory without serious contraindications and the remedy is approved by the World Health Organization, maybe we have finally found the drug that will save us from Alzheimer's. And for that reason, many of us think that Cecilia Ahern, the author of Roar, deserves the Nobel Prize in Medicine for her achievements in neurological research. I invite all you to sign a nomination to be sent to the Swedish Academy. Marco and John will present you the necessary form. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Joan. We will do our best to make that happen, and especially to be in Barcelona for the show and to be able to taste those images and to gather all that knowledge through them. Thank you again for the very generous presentation. While everyone is clapping on the chat and saying thank you, I do have one question from the audience, and I want to remind the audience also that they are free to use the chat. It's keep the claps coming, but you are also welcome to send questions through. And I do have a question that was sent to me previously asking Joan, how you understand images of personal and family events that people themselves upload and circulate in the social media, places like Instagram, concerning this dementia of images. How you understand the personal images circulating there in relationship to this idea of the dementia of the image?
Well, to me, this concerns the loss of privacy. I think that digital times have completely killed the former value of intimacy. And I don't know if I understood properly the question. You mean why private family photographs circulates in the internet? That's the point?
Yeah, how you understand images of personal and family events that people upload to social media concerning this idea of the dementia of images. Yeah, maybe otherwise we can ask also the person who sent the question to extend it on the chat if you want to.
Yes, yes. You know, I'm not a sociologist, an anthropologist. I just can provide some intuitive answer. But the thing is that we have abandoned this idea of domestic limits or family limits or personal limits. We open ourselves completely. There's a kind of at one hand, big brother, but at the other hand, the sense that everyone is casting a reality show. I mean, I want to be the protagonist. I want to be the center of the whole story, and because of that, I should get visibility. If you are not visible, you don't exist. And maybe since this eternity, this immortality vanishing, this is a way to keep ourselves more alive.
Thank you also so much from my side, Joan. I think there was also a question before in the public chat by Martin Vollman, who's asking, social media is the fast food of the images, and also bringing it back to the digital side of things a little bit. Do you want to comment on that?
Well, I don't know. It's. I mean, this can be solved. I mean, the answer can be a complete book, and the answer can be just.
Let's start with an introductory chapter.
Social media are an effect of internet, of the materialization of images, the fact that instantaneous communication is now possible. It's one of the factors of hypermodernity, which some theologians and philosophers believe that it's the category which defines our time. That the possibility of communicating in all directions and getting instantaneous feedback. So I don't know if this is fast food or not. Actually, I'm not really a user of social networks. I'm an observer, but instead I have daughter and young children, and I'm quite scared because they get addicted, and it's not a metaphor. These days, the media in Barcelona are very obsessed with the suicide rate in teenagers groups, the depression increasing in the clinic hospitals. So and I think that there's a connection between cell phones and social media. I was listening that recent research established that every kid from 5 up to 18 years spends 2 hours and a half playing with video games, average. 2 hours and a half and 1 hour and a half social media. This means 4 hours a day or more. Even I think it's not that much. Kids are absolutely absorbed by screens. This means that they have a passive attitude towards the world. And maybe I'm getting old and I look the situation from, by the way, my birthday was last Friday.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, yeah.
I'm feeling quite old or quite wise at the same time because I have more experience. And I'm worried about the fact that they are not interested in books. They are not interested in actual experience of the things. Everything is filtered by the screen, by the I don't know. And to me, that's dangerous. And we should try to be more educational and share some resistance attitude to this situation. Of course, social media have qualities. The problem is how you get a correct balance. You can use them as tools to advertise your activities, to communicate important events and things like that. But if you are not able to take care of not getting that in excess, overwhelming all the rest of your social and personal activities, it can be dangerous. I don't know.
And obviously, John and I have been living on Zoom since 2020, every 2 weeks. So we probably have a very different opinion. But of course, we are here as moderators. So let's bring up the next question.
Yeah, there's a comment more than a question on the chat that I would like to bring in. Talking about, I mean, even if like it's digital images are regarded often as dematerialized, as like not having a substance, is arguing the debate that particularly in Ireland, where it seems that this person is based, there's a debate about the carbon footprint of data, of like the power that images, and particularly networked images, digital images, use. And I was also thinking about that when you were talking about the snails. And you said about this cycle of life, of like the image and then the snail and then the human, and I guess then creates an image again, and it can create. I don't know if you thought on this idea of eating images in relationship to the environment, given that it's also a big concern nowadays.
Well, I'm just learning about that, and for instance, I didn't mention, but I have some notes.
Mhm.
There's a not so well-known Brazilian philosopher called Norval Baitello Jr., who, by the way, has investigated the relationship of the image and the body, and is the author of a theoretical essay which has been very important to me, which is A Era da Iconofágia, Reflexões sobre Imagem, Comunicação, Media e Cultura. This is something like an age of iconophagy, reflections on images, communication, media, and culture. And it's interesting because I found it later when I was interested in all these concepts that he understands iconophagy as an intellectual tool to understand the current crisis in which the relationship of images and humans is getting unbalanced. And it's very interesting because he established four categories. Let me just summarize this for you. He talks about pure anthropophagy, not anthropophagy, which means that bodies that appropriate each other's, bodies eating bodies. Then there are impure anthropophagy, in which the body feeds on images, reveals that the other no longer has materiality and has been reduced to an image. This is the reality transformed into pure image. Then there's impure iconophagy, when the body enters the image and begins to live as a character. And finally, the more interesting is pure iconophagy, when images devour other images, a fact that refers to the way in which images overlap, physically and symbolically. And I think that this is what is happening in internet and in the post-photographic scene. I mean, images which react to other images. Images produced probably by machines, by artificial intelligence, which are intended to interact with other machines, and humans are getting apart. So this is a kind of interesting situation in which we should reflect. And as artists, as creators, as intellectuals, I think that we have here a ground which should be really reconsidered critically.
Thank you. Maybe actually as a follow-up to this question, we have Chad Dixon, who says, doesn't the internet allow people on one side of the planet to experience things on the other side that they might never have experienced? And then they follow with, in my experience, I think I've learned more about the world since the internet came to smartphones than I ever did at school and college. I'm 60, by the way.
Yes.
So I think to counter this slightly apocalyptic view of the fury of images.
But probably because this person is 60, has, I mean, he's not a digital native, so he's able to just filter the positive qualities of the internet and digital culture. And I think that I'm in a similar position. I mean, I don't deny at all digital culture. I welcome it. But I just warn that we should be prudent, because it can be overwhelming, especially with young people who has not the tools to resist the fascination, that charming. It's like a snake charming effect, that screens and video games and all this paraphernalia is providing.
There's a few people on the chat asking about the title of the philosopher that you just mentioned. I'm not sure if you can show maybe.
Yeah, I wonder. Well, I can write it in on the. Do you see the?
Yeah, Brazilian philosopher Norval Baitelo Jr. Yeah, a era da iconophagia. Yeah, reflexiones sobre imagen, comunicación, media y cultura. Yeah, you can see it. Thank you. I have another question from the audience saying that in one of your interviews at Photo Ideas quotes, you said, thanks to the several inventions and new technology like photography, the world become smaller and closer. From economic and political perspectives, photography contributed to the control of the world by means of its symbolic appropriation. And having this in mind, this person asks, what do you think about artificial intelligence and its relationship to art?
Well, we are in a revolution moment, as crucial as in 1839 when photography was discovered. I can imagine people in Paris holding a daguerreotype in the hand and getting astonished, but not understanding how that was possible. It was a mirror, and usually a mirror changed the reflection according to the movement of your hand. But in this case, the mirror captured one of the reflections and encapsulated forever. So how was this possible? I mean, it was evident you had the daguerreotype in hand, so you couldn't deny that this was possible, but you were not able to understand how this was produced. And I think that we are in a moment, and we are not aware completely, maybe more important than the Industrial Revolution, how all these intelligence machines with deep learning processes are able to implement themselves and be able practically to be autonomous. I'm experimenting with algorithms. I'm not an expert, but I collaborate with friends who are really very geek and experts. And I'm fascinated at the possibility of producing new visual universes. But I'm concerned with the future. All these new technologies, all these new scientific progresses is completely reshaping our world. Probably I won't see it, but that the next generation will have tools which will be very powerful to emancipate, but also to oppress. So I don't know which direction will finally will have more weight. Even if you look at the history of internet, at the first times, internet was a kind of libertarian project, a kind of anarchistic, trying to provide open culture for everybody, sharing intelligence, sharing information, and so on. And from the original idea to the current internet stage, I think that we have lost that spirit of freedom, of democratization, of socialization, and so on. And we tend more and more to consider internet a way to distribute economic values, how make money with the different data that circulates and so on. So I'm a witness. I think that I have the privilege of being witness of all these improvements of the new technological tools, and concerning artificial intelligence. I'm fascinated at the same time that I'm fascinated the other side by natural stupidity. Artificial intelligence and natural stupidity are somehow factors which should compensate each other.
Thank you so much once again. I think this is like the perfect moment to wrap it up. Thank you, Joan, for your very generous screen walk tonight. And thank you also to all the audience who has joined.
Thank you also from my side. And hopefully here at Screenworks, we will continue to use this technology that is somehow also a bit of a victim of what you said, like Zoom and YouTube and all of this, but to promote and continue a discussion about digital culture and art. And in fact, we're back in 2 weeks on March the 15th with a very online artist, Jason Isolini, who will perform his Ballad of the Laborer, an online piece performed live on Screenwalk. So make sure to come back in 2 weeks.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Bye. Take care.